Hey everyone, it's Ivan, keepbadger.com, out here today to kind of wrap up my look at the tactical games and where it has come as of kind of the end of 2022. I ended up having the fortune, probably, of essentially getting to take part in the tactical games as it kind of came online. I participated in the first one that was, technically it was the second one I guess, first one actually open to the public, not an invitational, and went through probably like 5 or 6 of the first tactical games, kind of through that first year of it establishing itself, I guess. And I finally walked away from it, I think end of 2019, pretty disappointed on a lot of different fronts, and kind of left with a bad taste in my mouth, honestly. Moving forward, didn't really give it much thought, and I knew that it had changed ownership. Ended up getting sold to one of the competitors, actually, Jared. He ended up coming in first. I came in second. I think it was the second game I went to down in Meridian, Mississippi, I want to say. But cool guy. He ended up actually purchasing it and didn't really know what happened to it after that. Fast forward, had the opportunity to go down, check it out in, I guess, kind of late 2022, September 2022, and go down and compete again. And I was able to do that and kind of see pretty stark difference from what it was and honestly what it's become. So I guess we'll go ahead and start with the tactical portion of the tactical games. For me, having that in the name has always kind of evoked certain things, made me think, like created an expectation, we'll say. And so I historically have been like, this isn't that tactical. And I will say, yeah, like honestly, it's just kind of a personal bias of mine. When you have, hey, something is like tactical games, in my mind, it creates a certain expectation. Now, what do you want? So here's the deal with that though. And I've talked to the owner, Jared, about this, and I'm in total agreement. So whenever you have the application of some sort of tactics, and then at the same time, a competition, so it has to be scored, it creates a really kind of nebulous metric to score. Like, did you actually clear that corner when you came in? Or is that tourniquet actually on tight enough for the application of a tourniquet? It gets really difficult. Like, it does. It makes it really hard. And you even look at like CrossFit games, not a huge fan, but they'll have some like arguably just kind of stupid modifications to exercises because for no other reason than it makes it an easier metric to follow. Like burpee over the bar. Like, well, did you start on one side and then end up on the other? Cool, that's easy to measure. Again, easy metric. So with that, what's tactical about the tactical games? Well, you're wearing a plate carrier, shooting 2 guns, rifle, pistol, like primary, secondary, and some of the other kind of accessory gear you could argue is tactical gear. Largely, it ends there. And you're like, well, nope, it ends there. So then we have the game portion, which honestly, they've largely nailed. There was one thing consistently that even from the beginning, the tactical games did a good job with. And that was competition amongst peers at the same time. Like, it's really cool. If you go to most shooting sports, you're gonna go run a stage by yourself, which there's value there, but competing shoulder to shoulder with someone, like running through a certain event, whatever it may be, that definitely pushes you to a different level versus just running through by yourself. That has always consistently been a really cool, probably one of the coolest parts of the tactical games. But from the word go, like there was so many just failures. One of which, timetable. Like it was always wildly off schedule. In part, the original tactical games, like they would never run any stage beforehand. They'd be like, hey, I found this in my pocket. Like, let's try this today. And then the whole timeline for the whole day would get like totally just thrown off. I remember, I think it was in South Carolina, event down there, like the women's division, they competed in one event, one of 3 events on day 1. And then come sunset, it's like, hey, sorry girls, like we didn't have a chance to do your other event, but we'll try and fit it in tomorrow. So you get to do like 5 events on day 2. Terrible timing across the board, just really poorly run. I will say now, there's a timetable and everything follows that timetable and it's really well executed. It's like, hey, you have check-in from like 05:30 to 06 if you didn't check in the previous day. And after that, safety reef starts at 06, go through squatting, all of this stuff. First shots, 0700. And everything is broken up into blocks of time to where everything actually works. Like the events, one, they actually test the events beforehand, like you normally would if you were running a competition. And with that, there's a time cap. So you have X amount of time to complete this. In some of the events, largely you're gonna finish below the time cap no matter what. But then other ones, like, hey, like you might not actually finish this event within the allotted time. But having that time cap, we'll say like 12 minutes, it then gives them a 15-minute block to actually run an event for like a heat. So at the 0, at the 15, at the 30, at the 45, at the 0, and be able to basically regulate it that way rather than having things go long because you just haven't finished the evolution yet. And having things run on time, that is a big deal. And they're absolutely nailing that now. They've also now done a really good job of the balance of kind of physical activity as well as shooting. So with respect to the physical portion of it, one, just balanced in the sense of you can't outlift or outstrength your way through the event, and you can't really outshoot your way either. So if you are just like a phenomenal athlete and you shoot your target and it looks like a shotgun, like you're not going to win. Conversely, if you're amazing and just keyhole every round and like you're gassed out because you're grossly out of shape, like you're probably not going to win. Like there's definitely a balance there, and they've done a good job kind of making it balanced. And with that, largely improving the shooting. The shooting used to be so boring, and it would be a stage of like, hey, you're gonna shoot like 10 rounds standing, 10 rounds kneeling, 10 rounds prone, or hey, you need to shoot 15 rounds from a side or around this whatever, like picnic table, and then 15 around this side, and then stand up and shoot another 50. Like I remember melting a suppressor cover on one event and it just turns into a Spindex. Like you're just like, I'm so tired of pulling the trigger right now. Like the shooting was honestly really boring. And so now they've definitely done a good job with forcing positional shooting to where, hey, you're going to use this VTAC barricade and you need to be able to shoot through this port and then this port and then this port. So maybe when you come up to the line, you're going to shoot a total of like 9 rounds pistol, 9 rounds rifle, but 3 of those from this port, then 3 from this, 3 from this. So you're not just static, like burning through half a mag for the sake of like the shooting, which I actually really appreciate because it gets really boring. And so that coupled with different kind of geometric shapes, which we go back to tactical. Is it tactical? Not really. Like I personally would much rather just shoot at IPSC. And if you need to shoot a low probability target, like cool, now it needs to be like in that credit card. So we can work standoff and do all of like mechanical offset rather, all of those things and create low probability targets. But they approach it a different way. And it's basically different geometric shapes on paper at different distances for rifle and pistol. And yeah, it works. It's not easy. And another important piece to that shooting component is, again, because they actually have the stages mapped out beforehand, is an accurate round count. I remember showing up to the first tactical games I did. It's like, hey, what's the round count? 1,000 rounds pistol, 1,000 rounds of rifle. I'm like, okay. Of course, we show up and we shoot probably less than 200 rifle and 200 pistol. I don't know. It was definitely not north of 300 and 300. And I'm like, cool, man. Like, I flew here. Thank you. Like, you get stuck with all this ammo at this location that you're not going to be able to just put in your luggage. If you're wondering, it's an 11-pound limit for ammo, usually with most airlines. So they've definitely done a way better job on that front as well, to where it's like, hey, 250 rifle, 250 pistol, walking away from it, you're going to probably shoot close to 250 of each, and you might have like half a box left or whatever of respective rifle and pistol. Let's talk about prizes. That first tactical games I went to, I came in second, and it was cool. I ended up winning Desert Eagle, not the 50 cal, which would have been way cooler. I think this one was like 357 Magnum. Still pretty cool. There was also a huge mix-up because they put the guns in the different boxes, so the serial numbers got mixed up. Never ended up getting the actual gun that like I won. Whatever. Fast forward, second tactical games. Came in second place again. And I got like a sweet little backpack. Like an E&E backpack too, so like not even big enough for anything really meaningful. I ended up giving it to one of my boys. I think he took it to school. All he could fit in was like his lunch because it wouldn't fit like a school binder, but cool. All right. Wild inconsistency with respect to the prize table. Me personally, that was not, it's not like, hey, I need to go win this. Granted, when I won that Desert Eagle, I was like, sweet, because I turned around and sold it, paid my rent, being poor, and that was awesome. But I never showed up like, hey, like, I want to get on the prize table. But if you do want to get on the prize table, or you happen to get there, consistency is usually a good thing. So now they're getting and maturing to the point where they actually have a real prize table, where it's actually guns, like real guns, from places like Sons of Liberty Gun Works or Ballistic Advantage or Optics, Vortex, stuff like that, and actually getting some good steam behind kind of the sponsorship side of it, to where they actually have a prize table that doesn't suck, which is pretty good when you're growing a competition. Something else I've definitely seen change is basically the breakdown of the divisions. So originally I think there was intermediate and elite, and then there was like a women's division, and it ended up progressing to where I think like a master's division was eventually added, and now I want to say there's like two different master's divisions, like 40 plus and then I think 50 plus, and there's women's, I think intermediate and elite, and there's still men's intermediate and elite, and now at this point I believe there's tactical as well. And so if you look at it at like a scale, basically intermediate, I think shares the same weights as like maybe the master's divisions, and basically beginner, like the lowest tier of weights. And then intermediate, in between the lowest and the highest, would be tactical, where those weights are increased from the intermediate to a intermediate weight in the tactical division, and then beyond that you have elite, which is decidedly elite. And if you look at it from like just a competence or like a strength standpoint, when you get into like the elite now, it's basically, are you a competitive athlete? Like, do you go to like Granite Games or some sort of like regional CrossFit competition to where you can lift and move heavy weights with really good body mechanics? Me personally, absolutely not. Like, I want to say the sandbag those guys were picking up was like 200 pounds. Like, pass. That's a recipe for me to hurt myself. Like, no. I'm pretty sure that ship sailed. I'm not saying I couldn't pick it up, but there's only so many of those in me. And if I need to pick that up, like, it's because of a need, not just because of a competition. Like, I don't want to come away from there getting hurt. And so I guess if you look at it with respect to sandbags, I forget what the intermediate was, something below 100 pounds. I think it might have been 90 pounds, something like that maybe. And then tactical intermediate is 125 pounds, I think. And then like the elite was like 200 pounds. Like some significant weights there. But yeah, it's basically broken up now in a bunch of different divisions, again, to include like different masters divisions and stuff like that. So now the tactical division was kind of what the old elite division was. And now the elite division is basically like, are you going to qualify for the CrossFit Games? Because that's probably where you are with respect to physical fitness. Oh yeah, and with respect to divisions, also a division that is partner division. So you two will basically split the work amongst yourselves and can help each other with different tasks, and yeah, which is cool. So how are the tactical games now compared to when I stepped out like 3 years ago as filming this? They're way better, like just way better executed. Yeah, just across the board, like better shooting, better prizes, and the event just actually runs on time, which is a pretty big deal, and it runs smoothly. And even to that end, historically, terrible problems with scorekeeping. I'm not saying that people did not try their hardest, but yeah, there were always huge problems with scorekeeping. And initially it was just paper, and then finally they moved to practice score. There was still like people not understanding like how the stuff got input, whatever it was. Always problems with scorekeeping. And part of it is it's volunteer based as far as the people keeping score and helping with that. And those volunteers do an amazing job, but they're also volunteers. Like usually when you get paid for something, you're then held responsible, so you end up trying harder. Not that they are not trying, but scorekeeping has gotten way, way better to where it's all put in practice score. And hey, if you have an issue, you can bring it up. And then at the very end of the whole event, before the awards ceremony, there's a window of time. It's like, hey, if you need to contest anything, come over. They actually keep all the targets basically in order. So you're like, hey, on this event, blah, blah, blah. Boom, athlete number. Is this you? Yeah. You can look at your targets. And so that has gotten way, way better, which is great. So who do I think the tactical games would be good for? Big picture, anyone that wants to test themselves both physically as well as with respect to shooting. Like it's those two domains. The events are largely like CrossFit style. And that, again, on the one hand, makes it to where you can have like a par time. So the event actually runs smooth because you have this much time to complete this before we move on. And yeah, so it'll be like a rep scheme of like 4, 3, 2, 1 with like trips to the firing line in between there or different things along those lines. I think it's honestly a lot of fun. One of which I mentioned originally the tactical games had going, like largely the best and only thing it had going, and it still absolutely has going, and is one of the best things about it is the fact you get to actually go compete with people. Like I have some really good friends who essentially bonded over the tactical games, like honestly, and it's a recipe for success anyway, just from like big picture standpoint. Marine Corps uses it all the time. Shared suffering. When you go and have to push through discomfort with people around you, you've all been in the same place. So it's like, oh yeah, hey, remember that? Like, yeah, I remember that. Super relatable because we both had to suck through that, whatever, like 150-pound sandbag they threw out at, I think it was North Carolina, and then forgot to change for the intermediate. This is back in the day, like 2019. Straight up broke people. They didn't even come back the next day. But I guarantee everyone that went through that event definitely a shared experience with the other 4 people in their heat. And yeah, they bonded over that. And even now, like much better run, you still get that. And there's pretty much nowhere else kind of in like the shooting world where you actually get to go compete, not that I know of rather, like online with other people. Like you have different things like Modern Minuteman course with Amtech. Amazing, really fun. It is a competition. Everyone's kind of out there at the same time, but it's not shoulder to shoulder like working through some sort of event. And that is a really cool, really fun aspect of the tactical games, honestly. The other nice thing about the tactical games is you're going to end up meeting some pretty cool, like-minded people. And I say pretty cool, I'm sure there's some a-hole out there, but here's the thing. If you show up with an ego, like, that gets corrected very quick, like straight out the gate. And so everyone there, big picture, is there to have fun. And those egos usually get checked really quick. So everyone's just like, hey man, like, I'm out here to suffer just like you. And I think you definitely see that in like the women's divisions and stuff like that, because yeah, it just turns into a really supportive group, because all of them know respectively like how difficult it is to put yourself out there and go do this like shooting physical fitness competition. So usually people have a really awesome welcoming experience, definitely over on the women's side as well. Big picture, I think they've done a really good job just really refining it, like safety, timetable, water, like there's water, it's kind of a big deal. I remember on the first one, they're like, unknown distance run. We're like, okay. Turned out to be like 5 miles, and they had like 8 water station somewhere like halfway out there with like 6 bottles of water. And I think there were like, I don't know, 30 competitors or something like that. No. Way better run across the board. And honestly, it's fun. Should you go there expecting to have some level of proficiency with respect to tactics and stuff like that? No, absolutely not, because it's in the name. Just think about it as like the tactical part is the gear you're wearing, and it ends there. Big emphasis being on the game. And like I said, it's fun. Largely, it's kind of CrossFit and shooting. So if you enjoy those, like, this is that. The other thing that's nice is just, which kind of spoke to, like, community. And you'll see people come out there with their families to either like compete, whether it's cousins or something like that, or just cheer each other on, or like a father-son I ended up meeting out there, which I think there were actually a couple, and stuff like that, which is pretty cool to be able to not only have an event, but to be able to get to share it with, in that case, like a generation. I think that's really cool too. But overall, definitely just, yeah, a fun shooting event that is largely different from most any other, really, when it comes down to it. Being able to run that with a group of people at the same time, and the incorporation of some pretty strenuous physical fitness with shooting. But yeah, I had a good time out there. And if you're interested, there'll be a link down below and you can go check it out. But yeah, go test yourself if you want to. You may or may not like the result you get. I only say that because a lot of people are afraid to go compete because you might find out you're not the hero you are in your mind. But better to know than not know. And as always, thanks for joining us at kitbadger.com. Look forward to seeing you next time.